The courtroom did not feel like a place for children. Fluorescent lights hummed coldly above gray walls. Rows of empty wooden benches echoed every small movement. On the raised platform, behind a heavy desk buried in thick case files, sat Judge Hayes, a man the lawyers whispered about as strict, fast, and impossible to sway. He flipped through a thin folder with Daniel's name on it, as if it were just one more file in a long line. On the left, a social worker in a neat blazer spoke in a practiced, steady tone. "Your Honor, due to repeated concerns about the home environment, we recommend immediate removal of the minor, Daniel Cruz, into temporary state custody. This is for his own safety." There was an empty chair where a mother should have been. "Mother remains hospitalized after her incident," the social worker added, barely pausing. "She is unable to appear." The judge nodded, already reaching for his pen. That was when Daniel's small hand clamped around his sister's sleeve, 12-year-old fingers shaking, eyes too big for his thin face. "Mara," he whispered, so quietly only she could hear, "don't let them take me." She felt every word land like a stone in her chest. Mara was 17, wearing the only clean blouse she owned, its collar frayed. No lawyer sat beside her. No one had explained the rules. She only knew one thing: if that man signed that paper, her brother would disappear with strangers. Her legs moved before her mind caught up. She stood. "Miss, you may sit down," the judge said without looking up. "We're nearly finished here." Her voice came out cracked, too loud in the hollow room. "Please don't take him." The social worker glanced back, slightly annoyed. The clerk stopped typing. Mara swallowed hard, forcing the words through her fear. "Please don't take him. I'll be the one you punish." Her hands trembled as she spoke, but she didn't sit down. "Whatever you think we did, whatever's in those papers, take it on me, fine me, blame me. Just don't take him." Silence hit the courtroom like a sudden power cut. The humming lights seemed louder. Somewhere a chair creaked. Even the security guard at the door stopped shifting his weight. Judge Hayes finally looked up. He was used to tears, to parents begging for second chances, to rehearsed excuses, but this was different. Standing in front of him was a girl with fear in her eyes and something fiercer behind it, someone offering herself up as if this were a punishment line and she had stepped forward out of turn. His hand, already lifting the gavel to finalize the order, froze mid-air. He narrowed his eyes, studying her as if seeing the file name for the first time. "Sit down, young lady," he said slowly, the edge in his voice softening into curiosity. He set the gavel down without striking it. The judge's command hung in the air, and before Mara could open her mouth, the scene around her seemed to blur. In her mind, the cold courtroom walls slid away, replaced by the familiar chipped yellow of their apartment kitchen. Their home had never been pretty, paint peeled in crooked strips along the hallway, and the second-hand couch in the living room sagged in the middle like it was tired from holding too many worries. The carpet was worn thin where Daniel's toy cars had driven the same imaginary roads 1,000 times. But it was warm. It was warm when Alina came in after the late shift, dropping her keys onto the rickety table with a sigh and a soft, "I'm home, Miss Amores." It was warm when Mara stirred a pot of rice and beans, while Daniel sat at the table, pencil clutched tight, tongue pucking out as he tried to solve his math. "Carry the one, remember?" Mara leaned over him, tapping the paper. "You can do this." "You should be at your game," murmured Alina from the door, still in her work uniform. "The school invited parents and everything." Mara shrugged, turning back to her brother's wheezy breathing. "It's just volleyball, Mama. He has a test tomorrow." She was 17, but moved through the apartment like a second mother, measuring out his asthma medicine, keeping the inhaler within reach, listening at night for the faint whistle in his chest that meant he was slipping toward danger. Above them, on the 7th floor, with the polished door and the potted plants that never seemed to wilt, lived Mrs. Halberd. She wore perfume you could smell in the elevator before you saw her, sharp, expensive. She looked at Mara's thrift store shoes and Daniel's hand-me-down backpack like they were stains on the building. "Those people," she would mutter into her phone as she passed them in the hallway. "Always shouting, always some drama. The boy is trouble, I can tell." Noise bothered her. Laughter bothered her. Poverty, most of all, bothered her. One night the building lay wrapped in darkness and thin walls. It was past midnight. Outside, a siren wailed somewhere far away. Inside the small bedroom, Mara awoke to a sound she knew too well, a tight, panicked wheeze. "Danny?" she whispered, already half out of bed. He sat up, clutching his chest, eyes wide. "Can't breathe." She grabbed the inhaler with shaking hands, pressing it to his lips, counting softly. 1, 2, slow. "You're okay. Look at me, Danny." In the kitchen, a glass of water waited from earlier, still half full. Elena, hearing the cough, scrambled from the sofa where she had fallen asleep in her work uniform. "Mara, is it bad?" "He's tighter than before," Mara called, listening to the ragged pull of air. Panic nipped at the edges of her voice. "We might need—" Elena never heard the end of the sentence. Bare feet slapped the kitchen tiles as she rushed toward them. Her heel caught a forgotten toy car. The sound of Daniel's struggling breaths drowned out the small crack of glass tipping off the counter. There was a shatter, a sharp cry, and then a sickening thud. "Mama!" Mara ran, heart slamming against her ribs. Elena lay on the floor, her dark hair spread out, a thin line of red blooming under her head. Her chest rose and fell, but her eyes did not open. For a moment the world broke into pieces. Daniel gasping in the bedroom, Elena motionless on the tiles, the taste of fear like metal in Mara's mouth. Her fingers fumbled with the phone, dialing emergency. Minutes later, the building filled with real sirens and heavy boots on the stairs. The door burst open. Paramedics swarmed around Elena. One of them called for more help. Another shone a light into her eyes. Behind them, wrapped in a robe and indignation, stood Mrs. Halberd. "I told you," she said to the officers, arms folded. "There are regular fights in that apartment, screaming all hours. I've reported it before. Something had to happen eventually." No one asked her what kind of screaming she had heard. No one asked her if she could tell the difference between a child fighting for breath and a child being beaten. They saw what they expected to see. A cramped apartment, dishes in the sink, school notices unanswered on the table, a mother on the floor, blood in her hair. A boy, pale and sweating, with a purple bruise on his shin from where he'd crashed his bike 3 days earlier. One officer took Daniel's arm gently, guiding him to the couch. Another pulled out a notepad. A social worker arrived, eyes tired, glancing around quickly as her pen began to move. "Environment appears unstable," she murmured into her phone. "Neighbor confirms history of shouting, child with visible bruising, mother unconscious, unknown cause." Assumptions hardened as fast as ink on paper. In the corner, Mara stood, arms wrapped around herself, watching the stretcher carry her mother away. "Where are they taking her?" she asked, her voice small. "To the hospital," someone answered, already turning back to the forms. A little later, when they thought she wasn't listening, the social worker stepped into the hallway, speaking softly into her phone. "Yes, I think we'll recommend removal. It's safer that way. No immediate family present who can be responsible." Mara's hand closed around the doorframe. Safer. The word echoed in her head like something broken. She looked back at Daniel, clinging to his inhaler, eyes following every uniform in the room. "I won't let them take you," she whispered to him, though her own knees were shaking. She brushed his hair from his forehead, voice low and fierce. "I don't know how, but somehow I won't let them take you." Mara snapped back into the present with the taste of that hallway still in her mouth. She sat alone at the respondents' table, hands folded so tightly her knuckles looked white. No attorney leaned in to whisper advice. The clerk had said it plainly. Legal aid couldn't be reached in time. Across the aisle, the social worker opened a neat folder like it was the whole truth. She laid out glossy photos of their apartment, dishes in the sink, laundry piled in a corner, the chipped paint like a confession. Then came school records with missed days highlighted in yellow, as if love had an attendance code. Last was Mrs. Halberd's typed statement, stamped and signed. Concerned neighbor, frequent screaming, unsafe environment. Judge Hayes skimmed, pen tapping once against the paper. "This looks straightforward," he said, voice flat, suburban calm wrapped in authority. Mara's chest tightened. "Your Honor, You'll have your turn," he cut in, eyes still on the page. Beside her, Daniel stared at the floor, lips moving silently as he counted his breaths. 1, 2, 3, just like Mara had taught him to do when panic tried to steal his air. The judge reached for the removal order. Daniel's breathing hitched, a thin wheeze sliced the silence. And Mara's fear finally burst through the rules. "You don't even know us," she cried. "You're punishing him because we're poor." The words rang off the walls. The courtroom went still. Judge Hayes stared at Mara as if she'd slapped the air itself. For a second, irritation tightened his jaw, then something else flickered there, the smallest crack of curiosity. He glanced at the clerk, then back at the folder, and finally at the boy counting breaths beside her. 2 minutes, he said sharply, "that's all, and you will control yourself." Mara stood, legs unsteady. She stepped closer to the rail, hands clenched so hard her nails bit into her palms. Her voice wasn't polished. It didn't sound like court. It sounded like a girl who'd been holding up a ceiling with her bare hands. "I missed school because my mom works double shifts. She cleans offices at night and serves tables in the morning. When she's gone, I'm the one who makes sure Daniel eats and takes his medicine and," her throat tightened, "and breathes." She wiped at her face with the back of her hand, embarrassed by the tears, but unable to stop them. "You see those absences?" She nodded toward the highlighted pages. "That wasn't me being lazy. That was me staying home when his chest got tight, because if I leave him alone, he gets scared, and then it gets worse." Her eyes found Daniel's, and he looked up at her like she was the only solid thing in the room. "I stand outside his classroom sometimes," she admitted, voice dropping. "Not to spy, because we can't afford a tutor, and I'm not good at school like other kids, so I listen to the lessons through the door, then I teach him at night." The judge's pen stopped tapping. Mara swallowed, shaking from head to toe now. "I know his breathing," she whispered. "I can tell when it's normal and when it's not. I've sat up nights counting his breaths so he wouldn't," her voice broke, "so he wouldn't die." She lifted her chin again, as if that was the only way to keep from falling apart. "If someone has to be blamed," she said, louder, "write my name, fine me, lock me up if it makes your papers look better, but don't take him." She pointed to Daniel without touching him, like she was afraid he might vanish. "He'll think he did something wrong. He'll think he wasn't worth staying for." For the first time, Judge Hayes looked unsettled, like the file in front of him had started to rot at the edges. Then a crisp voice rose from the gallery. "Your Honor?" Mrs. Halberd said smoothly, stepping forward with a confident little smile. "May I clarify a few things?" Judge Hayes hesitated, then nodded, clinging to procedure like a lifeline. "You may." Mrs. Halberd approached the front like she belonged there, perfume floating ahead of her confidence. Her hair was perfectly set, her voice perfectly measured. "I live directly above them, Your Honor," she began, folding her hands as if in prayer. "I've tried to be patient, truly, but it's constant shouting, dangerous chaos at all hours, doors slamming, screaming, a child crying." She tilted her head, pitying. "Some people just don't know how to live properly. They don't understand that walls are thin, that neighbors deserve peace, that children deserve better. The words landed with a polite cruelty, clean enough for court, sharp enough to cut. Mara took a step forward. "That screaming is when he can't—" "Miss," Judge Hayes snapped, pride rising in his tone, "you will not interrupt. You've been given your time." Mara's mouth closed, but her eyes burned. Daniel's fingers twisted into her sleeve again, like he could anchor himself to her. Mrs. Halberd continued, voice gentle, almost satisfied. "I feared something like this would happen. I reported concerns before. I only want what's best for the boy." Judge Hayes leaned back, as if her calmness confirmed the file. His gaze dropped toward the order again. Then the courtroom door creaked open. At the back stood a man in a faded janitor's uniform, cap in his hands, shoes dusted with stairwell grime. He hesitated, shoulders hunched as if he'd already been told no too many times in his life. Excuse," he said softly. "I have something to say." No one turned. The clerk frowned. The bailiff shifted. But Daniel did. His head snapped around, eyes widening with sudden light. "Uncle Kareem," he blurted, voice breaking through the courtroom's stiffness. Every face turned at once. Judge Hayes paused, caught off guard by the child's certainty, by the affection in that single name. Uncle Kareem stepped a half-step forward, clutching a worn little notebook to his chest with both hands. Mr. Kareem hailed, impatience battling whatever doubt had begun to form. "If you have something truly new to add," he said, "make it quick." And the camera held on Mr. Kareem's weathered fingers gripping that notebook like it contained a life.
Mr. Kareem walked forward as if every step had to be earned. He didn't look at Mrs. Halberd. He looked at Daniel first, then Mara, like he needed to remind himself why he was here. "I am Kareem," he said, accent thick, words careful. "I take care of building. I see many things. Not from spying." He pressed a hand to his chest. "From living." Judge Hayes nodded once, impatient but listening. Mr. Kareem lifted his chin. "When elevator break, many times, this girl," he pointed gently toward Mara, "she carry boy up 6 floors. He is not small. She still carry. 1 step, 2 step, until her legs shake." Mara's eyes filled again, but she didn't wipe them this time. "And mother, Elena, she work hard. Sometimes she bring me food from job." He gave a small, embarrassed smile. "Leftover bread, soup. She say, 'Mr. Kareem, you eat. You are alone.' My pantry was empty. She still share." He opened the worn notebook with hands that trembled slightly. The pages were crowded with neat, slanted writing. "Here," he said, turning it so the judge could see. "Dates, times, night calls." He tapped line after line. "When boy cannot breathe, she call me to help carry bags, to call ambulance, to fix heater. This not neglect, this is care." Mrs. Halberd's smile tightened. Mr. Kareem's voice lowered, still respectful. "And this lady," he glanced toward her without accusation, like stating whether. "When ambulance come, she angry. She say loud in hallway. Some people should learn to shut up. She say, if they were my children, I'd shut them up." A murmur moved through the room. The social worker's composure flickered. Her eyes darted to the folder, then away, uneasy. Judge Hayes pulled the case file closer, flipping through it again, slower this time. He noticed what he hadn't before. No medical records requested, no teacher interviews, no second neighbor, just photos, absences, and one polished statement. His face changed, something hard melting into something embarrassed. He set his pen down, not gently, but decisively. "This court will not sign an emergency removal today, not on a file built on assumptions and a single neighbor statement." The social worker opened her mouth, then closed it again. "I am ordering a full investigation, medical records, a statement from Daniel's physician, interviews with his teachers, a home visit with proper context and follow-up, multiple sources, not just photographs taken on the worst night of their lives." Mara's knees nearly gave out. "And effectively immediately," he said, "Daniel will remain with his sister, Mara Cruz, under temporary guardianship while their mother recovers. There will be regular check-ins, support services, not punishment." He turned then, eyes sharp toward Mrs. Halbert. And let the record reflect this. Poverty is not a crime. If reports to this court are exaggerated out of bias or personal dislike, that is not concern. That is harm. Mrs. Halbert's face stiffened, lips pressed thin. Judge Hayes looked to the social worker. Stay after. We're going to review how this recommendation was made. Only when the gavel finally came down did Mara let herself collapse into the chair, a sob tearing free. Daniel wrapped his arms around her waist, like he was afraid she might disappear next. You did it, he whispered into her blouse. You kept me. Judge Hayes watched them, throat tight. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. You didn't ask me for mercy for yourself, he said, but for him. That is what real guardianship looks like. Weeks later, Elena came home from the hospital, moving slowly, one hand on the wall for balance, but her smile was steady. Mara opened the door, and Daniel nearly folded his mother in half with his hug. On the table sat a small food basket, bread, canned soup, a bag of oranges. Taped to it was a note in careful handwriting, from someone who didn't look away. Daniel held up a drawing he'd been saving, 3 stick figures under one crooked roof, all holding hands. It's us, he said proudly. Nobody's taking anyone. And somewhere across town, Judge Hayes sat alone in his chambers, sliding a handwritten card on his desk. Ask for the whole story. In a world where files move faster than feelings, a sister's love forced a system to stop and see a child. Never judge a family by its furniture. Judge it by how far they will go to protect each other. Most people look away when the poor are accused. Real courage is staying long enough to see the truth. If you've ever been misjudged for being poor or different, share your story in the comments. And subscribe if you believe no child should be taken away just because their love doesn't look rich on paper.